I want to build a decentralized social media platform so bad because I realize that if we don't do something that's actually good and get people over to a platform where there aren't puppeteers doing this, like there's no way to stop this.
I mean, you're right. I think the one iteration that we've seen Instagram or someone start to move toward is like the ability to start to actually curate your feed or
Yes, that's
choose
cool.
the algorithm, at least for, and I think you showed me that,
Yeah. Yeah.
for what it is that you're going to see. Right.
Yes.
And so that could
So
be something that helps too.
So let's talk about the decentralized social media part of this. So basically, what's the problem? Like, why is this a big deal? There's so many reasons why this is a big deal. We already talked about just the whole thing of truth. Hijacking your emotional state is a very big deal because we are driven by that. Like, even you can get sick by how you feel. Like, there's so many different things that are at play by how your emotional state regulates your physical experience. And so this is basically a tool to capture that. And so the problem with that is one, the creator economy that has been built where like there's so many people that are now supported by the creator economy where this just totally screws the whole economics of that whole thing. Like the whole thing crumbles, much like you said before. You gave the perfect analogy of how the gold is a self-regulating market due to the effort that's needed to create the output. Now, with content, that was the same sort of thing. Like effort and skill was needed to create the output. Now, a few people can go do what previously took 100 people to do.
Yeah. I mean, that part of it, we had RD talk about this one time, how uh, we talked about like in Hollywood, right? One of the biggest places where that economics of that could get skewed really fast. And so everyone was striking and they're like, hey, you can't do this and so on. And you brought up earlier today, like the likeness of a celebrity for an endorsement, like some of the most, um,
It, how do you pursue it legally, Keith, now? Because there's so many of them happening so fast. It's like the China effect, where you can't protect your IP because it moves too quickly and they've already sold the inventory before you penalize them.
right.
You can't stop it now.
You can't
Right?
stop it.
You can't stop it. So the only hope now is that we bring up people's understanding to the need of going somewhere else. Right? Like you have to explain to people what centralized social media is to then explain why we need decentralized social media. Right? There's
And I
so many layers of understanding that the public just doesn't have.
And I think the first step, like to the decentralized social media, and this is the thing that we've seen like the large institutions are working toward, and I'll actually bring up some examples of this, is decentralized identity. Okay.
Mm,
Because that's going to be the
wow.
absolute first step.
Yeah, totally.
Are you human or are you not? So I found this one organization called the Coalition for Content Provenance and Authenticity. Right. So this one isn't DID in particular, but it's a part of, this coalition of some of the largest companies in the world.
They're the members
And
of it.
they're the steering committee members of this
That's horrifying.
organization.
That sounds like shit. That sounds so backwards.
So I found that one. And then this next one is something that I think is really, really fascinating too, because now this one isn't necessarily just DID as well, but it's pretty much a lot of the stuff that we were talking about in general. And
Yes,
funny enough, if you follow anything about what's happening in AI, you would probably know about Sam Altman. And this WorldCoin project is actually uh, something that he founded. Um, kind of just like put it out there and then quickly transitioned to working on OpenAI, right? But this right here is not something to scoff at, right? What they're trying to do here is creating digital identities for to prove humanity in the age of AI. And so now they've done a really good job branding this, right? Because this looks so beautiful and futuristic and innovative. But what they're doing is they're scanning your eyeball. All right.
dang, that's crazy.
So the World ID verification happens at an orb, which is a device that verifies you are a unique human. After you verify with an orb, your proof of human World ID is stored on your phone in World app, where you can use it to sign into online apps and services. So it doesn't want to, they're trying not to just say it, but it's scanning your eyeball. Okay. And there's probably going to be other different ways that you could go about verifying your identity, but it's going to involve your biometric data of some sort. You're even going to have a passport. Okay. A little passport card that
Dude,
you could use.
the scariest part of all this, Keith, and I want you to keep explaining all of this, but like, as someone who runs online businesses, like, this is how they're going to get us, man, is I think about this and I'm like, oh, that would mean I don't need to remember my 8,000 passwords anymore.
Yeah, for sure.
right?
I mean,
And then I'm like, "Oh, maybe I'll do it."
oh,
And
100%.
then we're just cooked.
I mean, we got to think about what's going to happen here is you're going to have to do it. You pointed it out earlier. Like, think about this. Otherwise, it's going to be possible for someone to frame you for
Yes.
stuff.
Yes. It's inevitable reality at this point when you think about that.
That's it. It's done already. And yeah, like Rising Complexity said, like, dude, it's already done. Like, we're already trained to use our Face ID to log
Yes.
into our phone. Like, I
Yeah.
don't, but like,
You
it's,
don't?
I don't because they haven't forced me to yet. They used to force you to do like the thumb, I think.
Yes.
But now that they got rid of that, they don't force you to scan your face yet.
Wow. So why don't you do it?
Just because I've never thought that that was okay. I never thought the thumb was okay. I was like, I don't want my biometric data. Because here's the thing about biometric data is that someone can still get access to your stuff, and there's one major way that they could do it. Guess what that is? It's to off you.
That's what I was yeah, yeah.
Sorry, but like if you can't respond to me you using your hand, then I can use your hand or your eyeball or whatever, and like that's just where my mind immediately goes.
Yeah, no, it's crazy to think about. Yeah, it is. That is horrifying. I do it all the time just because I have so many passwords, and they give you the option to say you don't need to remember your password if you let us use your face, right? And
Yeah.
so it's stupid, and I shouldn't let them, but I do because, dude, I have to have think about it. Every business that I've run, I have to create like an email for it, passwords for it, all these different things, and they all have to be different, right? And so I've used some of the tools, but then if you're using even say like a password thing, then like what if that gets compromised? Then every password you have is in one place, and you're just totally cooked. Like there's no right way to do this. I usually like write them down and then have to report back to like a book. Like, that's the craziest thing to think about, right? And so, RD asked a really good question here. So, who's accountable? The platform, the creator? Well, this really comes down to your philosophy and perspective on things. I think we're all accountable if we want to make it a better solution. And yeah, Rising Complexity says it's just so convenient. That's how they get you, right? They push crazy shit under the guise of convenience and security. That's if any narrative is like, "Oh, this is more convenient," or "Oh, this will keep you safe." Why am I unsafe, brother? Like that's what I find so crazy with all these global conflicts, where they'll do something crazy and then they'll enact all of these things, taking our freedoms and liberties, and they're like, "It's for your safety." It's like, brother, you fought a war that I'm not related in. Like, I don't think I'm unsafe, dude. Like, it's like, you are causing these problems. Now you're trying to pitch a solution that like to a problem that you artificially created.
The Hegelian dialectic, I think is what it's called. Um,
I've not heard of that.
it's literally what you just described. I'll pull it up on my screen real quick. It says the Hegelian dialectic is a philosophical process where a thesis and initial idea is met with an opposing antithesis, and the tension between them is resolved through a synthesis that preserves the truth of both in a more complex, higher level understanding. So essentially, this is uh, used to describe, right? So let's just pull this up that process that you just talked about. So you have this agenda, right? That is actually what people want, someone wants. And then there's a thesis that's manufactured, right? To kind of um, create the reason why that thing makes sense. And then you have an antithesis, which is the response to that thing. And then now you've got the response being to remove freedoms, transfer power from many to the few, or whatever. So this is the idea in
Happens
general,
all the
what you just said.
time. And why it's so important to pay attention to all this stuff is because you see they run the same drills over and over and over again. Right, and so the only way that we have an opportunity to actually have some genuine say is to create platforms that they can't control. So I wanna explain the concept of decentralized social media with you guys if you're new to this. So think of your big platforms right now, they're all centralized, right? Like, let's say YouTube, the controllers of, say, the algorithm and all of these things is in the hands of very few people, right? And then also the infrastructure that allows the platform to exist. So it's very easy to turn up the dial on things they want seen, turn it down on things they don't, and silence people they don't want talking. That can happen very, very easily,
And
right?
they do it.
They do it all the time, bro. But they've done such a good job, like they do in every form of media, convincing anyone who's kicked off of there. It's because they were super, super extreme, right? It's like, well, what does that mean? That depends on the lens in which you're looking through, right? And so then there's other platforms like we talked about before with Rumble, but Rumble's not decentralized either. Like it's still a centralized entity. So a truly decentralized platform would be like what Bitcoin is trying to do with for money, right? Where there's a transfer of value that not one person can turn off or on and dictate who can say what, right? And so we basically need, and hopefully they're the 2% of good people out there. We need someone who's like Satoshi, but for social media, right? Like you need someone who's like, I'm going to build this system. It's not going to make me really rich, and I'm okay with that.
Yes. I mean, technically, Jack Dorsey, right, has been working on a project. I've kind of forgot the name of it already. I mean, he did Blue Sky, but then he left Blue Sky, from what I understand, to
Wait,
build this
he
new
made
one.
Blue Sky?
Yeah.
How is he allowed to do that?
Why would he be able to?
He made Twitter, no?
Yeah.
You can just go make a Twitter 2.0? Like
I,
that's
I
chill?
I I guess that's true. I mean, he sold all the, all the stuff to it, so why not? I mean,
That's
uh,
double dipping, bro. That's crazy.
the people wanted to come use it, which they did want to come use Blue Sky, but then he realized, I guess, that it wasn't actually decentralized enough. I don't know why I can't find the new thing. I'm kind of
Yeah,
upset about that. He created another one that is purely like actually blockchain decentralized,
got it.
and it's not doing super great, but he's been working on stuff like that his whole
It
time that
won't
he's
it
left
won't
Twitter.
it won't do great until people realize how big of a problem it is. Right. And so that's got to be said in so many different ways for everyone to understand, to rally behind the need for this kind of thing. And then also, people need to lower their expectations at least a little bit in terms of the user experience, because you're not going to be able to sprint from zero to YouTube. That's impossible. Right. Like, compare what YouTube looks like today to what it looked like in '04, whenever they started, whenever like they had the friggin' Smosh Pokemon videos. I actually remember that moment like it was yesterday. I remember the chair I was sitting in. I remember my sister was there. I remember her friend was there, and they showed me the first ever YouTube video I ever saw. And I could tell in that very moment that it would change the world. I was like, this is something so unbelievably massive. And I was probably like 8 or 9, but I was like, maybe a little older, 10, 12. But I was like, this is huge. And I became so obsessed with it from that point. But Rob has a very good question here. He says, who will own the image rights of your look, your likeness, your image? There's actually a creator who's a friend of mine on TikTok who has been creating content all around this exact thing for a very long time. We should have him on to see what he's done, because he's been trying to get the support of politicians and all of this stuff and trying to wake people up to how big of a deal this is. Because as we've talked about so many times before, Keith, where people are so focused on survival, they can't think about the macro stuff, because thinking about macro is kind of a luxury, right? Like, so last night, I literally ran into a guy who was down on his luck. He had like no support. And like, I walked with him, I talked with him, and he was explaining to me like the system that he has to try to deal with to find a bed as a homeless person who went to jail and then got like out onto the streets, and he's got no family, he's got no things. And the guy had no freaking toes. Like, the guy had lost his toes due to diabetes. So I'm walking with him. Tony was an absurdly nice human being. And like, we're all in like states of survival, but in slightly different ways. And like, that's why people who are worried that they can't pay their rent, they don't worry about people like Tony, because they're like, I can't survive either. But there's like layers to this thing, for one, and it's hard for everyone in different ways. And so until we communicate the problems that are there, it's difficult to understand the need for the solutions and how it comes from like, the other thing that's crazy is that, why do we all look to the people fucking us to solve our problem? We do that. Like, that's been trained in you. And so if you want to make things better, you got to go against the grain and do some stuff you've never done before, because like every person that you see, they're just you, man. Right? Like,
Right.
like I'm thinking, I'm walking through, I'm talking to Tony, and I'm like, bro, I could have been Tony.
Mhm.
Like, if I was born in Tony's situation, he's telling me the things that he's seen, the things he's been subjected to, how hard it is. Like, he has to go and claim that he's clinically insane to find a bed for the night. That's the world we live in. And I'm in Canada, right? And everyone says how great Canada is, how shitty your country is. Tony's walking the street with no fucking shoes, no toes. I had to go give him a coat. And then they might not even give him a bed, Keith.
It's crazy, man.
It's fucking insane, dude. Right? It's like that. That's why I try to think of the lens of the human experience through everything that I analyze, because you're just aware of how much deception has been done to keep us just looking up for authority. Right? Like, this is not something that happened overnight. And these tools, why they scare the shit out of me, is because they amplify the effectiveness of that manipulation so much. They make it so much faster. They make the ease of access so much better. And because I've come to the conclusion that I genuinely think human beings are inherently good, but there's like 2% of the population that is just so bad that they bank on that and they prey on that to make us all fall in line. I don't think there's that many evil people out there. I really don't. I just think that because most people aren't evil, the evil people can pull off some crazy shit.
100%. And what you said about this idea of, having the tools to be able to spread this misinformation or rather just ideas, right? That they want people to believe so quickly comes back to also what Chad was saying here in the chat, which is around this idea of the amount of users is what makes these platforms valuable.
Yes.
And I wanted to highlight something here because I know a lot of us here probably already know this, but just in case it hasn't ever come up before, there's this concept called Metcalfe's Law, which helps to describe the value of a network, right? Through essentially the value of the network is scales exponentially as you add more users to the network. And so the value of a network when you have two participants is whatever the connection is between those two people. Whereas when you add a third person, now you have the connection between those two people initially, but then also that third person who's now can talk to those other two people within that network. And then as you start to add more and more of those nodes, the new person now has this entire network of people that they can now interact with within that network, which makes each new node or each new addition to that network exponentially adding value to that entire network until eventually you get to this kind of part over here on the far right, where each connection that can be derived through that network creates a massive amount of value. And when you're talking about having, for instance, like a marketplace where you have two sides of that network. So Amazon is an example of this. You have the network of all of the different shoppers that are shopping, and then you have the network of all of the different sellers that are selling. And then when you mesh those two things together, you have this massive economy of two separate technically networks that you've developed and built in that provides so much of a moat for anything that wants to try to compete with that. And so you can look at this. This applies to everything. It doesn't just apply to like social media. It applied initially to the telegraph, right? Like whoever had telegraphs, right, were able to participate in this same kind of a way. And the value of AT&T back at that time, whatever it was called, Bell and whatever company, was based upon this same kind of a concept. But anyways, I just wanted to kind of
No,
describe that for anyone who's never heard of Metcalfe's law.
dude, that's so important because that's one of the core fundamental problems of all of our issues is that even in capitalism, like capitalism isn't a true free market because a free market would be void of the things like you're describing, right? Like, and some of it is just human nature, but if it was a truly free market, like there would be a chance, right? There wouldn't be these systems where if you actually have a better idea, the other person has more money, they just shut you down, right? That's happened throughout history so much. Like, look at the advent of mass distribution of electricity. Go look at that, people. Please go look at the story. Go look at how that came to be, why they chose the technologies that they did, and the practices that were there to allow inferior technology to be implemented everywhere because the person who was pushing the inferior technology had the money.
So this brings something up that is actually really funny that I saw the other day around Evan Spiegel. So one of the biggest things that's happened in social media over the past 10 years is like you had Facebook, when they went and they bought Instagram. That was like a really big moment. They spent like $1 billion on buying Instagram and
Dude, that was a
probably
power
the
move.
best investment
One of the best acquisitions of all time because
ever.
Facebook was like going under, it was becoming irrelevant, and then the connecting it to the two is what really gave it like impenetrable power.
Took it to a whole nother level.
Yes.
And it's crazy because think about the vision. Like, just think about how much like Instagram was not what it is now, right? It wasn't anything like that. So to be able to like see what was possible for Instagram and actually develop that out of it is really, really cool.
It's insane.
But anyways, hello, I'm going to say Shanice. I
What up,
hope
Shanice?
that's how I said. Did I say it right? Let me know.
RD is the one here that I wanted to address before we move
Uh-huh.
on to anything else. Do you think it would be different if we had CEOs of these companies that cared about the macro instead of the money in terms of like the human experience?
Hmm.
That's another thing that I think is connected to our only hope is the concept of like ethical entrepreneurship. And this is something that I've talked a lot about with Keith. I've talked a lot about with producer Kurt, who's in the background, about like people. It sucks because ironically, like the people who have been ruining our world have almost pushed the narrative that anybody who tries to go do something to compete with them would also be ruining our world, right? And so now we have this like we tear each other down, right? So if I go to try to build a business, people associate me as like, oh, I'm trying to be Jeff Bezos, so let's tear him down before he can become Jeff Bezos. That's a problem because if I can't infiltrate that society, I can't compete with them on an ethical level and create a solution that helps more people to actually win.
Do you think that that's how that goes? Like, The example that comes to my mind is like in politics. Like, yeah, you can join and compete against these people that are clearly corrupted politicians, but as soon as you get in there, you're going to be put in under the same kinds of pressures.
But that's only because of the power structures that are currently in place, right? So I'm saying that if we created more of a decentralized, well, also now it all comes down to the communication of the messages, right? Like, let's say we grow this show big enough, and I understand the platforms and the things that they pull well enough where I can articulate it in a way where the everyday person can understand what's going on here. I become a lot harder to take down, right? Because I would be able to voice what's happening, right? In a way that makes sense. And it's happened enough times to enough people that people know aren't crazy, where they're starting to pay attention a lot more, right? And so then the more that I have the opportunity to, like, and we all do, right? And to point out these things that are happening and where this bullshit comes into play, I do think that things can change, especially if we get more platforms where we hang out where they can't control it. Because if they can't nuke what I'm saying, right? If say we're on a new platform and they can't just nuke what I'm saying, that's actually free market. That's right. Of course, I think that even the platform that I will build, I'll have guardrails where you can't be like racist or have hateful things, right? Like there will be some fucking rules. But in terms of just like the efficacy of the content and the demand for it should be true market. And I think if that happens, because let's think about the core foundation of like why this is even possible. Keith made the fantastic point where the example that you just showed, the visual, where basically you reach a critical mass where it's impossible to come in and compete, right? So then there's the elimination of a free market. But the decentralized technologies that are being created, like they create more of an opportunity for that. I would say, ironically, AI is a democratized technology, right? Democratizing technology, because now, like the next business I'm about to start, we're going to be competing with massive juggernauts, and I will genuinely be able to have a serious chance because of AI, right?
Right.
So we can hate the technology, but it's actually also our opportunity. Like if you are a decent human being and you're good at entrepreneurship, you owe it to yourself to take on the biggest swing possible because you could potentially actually win. And then if you get up there because of true market forces, and then we get to be up there and deciding the rules, like if enough of us get up there, things can get better.
I love it. I
It's
love
not
it.
it's not easy. It's gonna be hard as shit, but I think like ethical entrepreneurship is really, really important. And so that's why for all my products that I make, like I could make more money by trying to like gouge people or have different pricing models or all these things, but I don't want to do that. Right. And a lot of these other problems, like even the people who are at these companies, they may not want to be doing that either. But the system that was created is fucking backwards, right? Like people who aren't even involved in the business, like, but the venture capital world is kind of crazy. Like that you can just throw money at these moonshots, and because you have the money, then you get the gains from whatever happens. And then in turn, you also get the control over the winners. That's a broken ass crazy concept for the betterment of humanity.
For sure. I mean, so what that would look like for me is like the fix to that is like crowdfunding, right?
Yes.
Crowdsourcing
Yes.
your capital raising.
So we need to change our relationship for like how we see money though. I think that's a very important thing, right? Is we can't associate it as it's just purely evil, because if we look at the people who have the most money and let's say we think that they're evil, the only way to play their own game is with the money, right? So it's really important to been the idealist. If I'm not like this, Sam, what else do we do, bro? Like this is our only chance, right? So I wake up in the morning and I wake up with a purpose because I'm like, yo, we can make this awesome as long as we figure out, like, first of all, the education is power, and then we need to put the right people in the right places. Another example of decentralized social media is topic oriented forum boards, old school. What do you mean by this? Like how Reddit used to be? The system stinks. Yeah, the system stinks, but I don't think the system stinks. I think it's perfectly designed, and people need to go get educated on the origin of these systems, right? Like, if you can't, until you truly understand a system, you don't even truly know how to complain about it. Because most of the time, the things that you're complaining about it aren't the actual problem. You just don't understand the problem well enough to actually have a valid argument. And so then these assholes that are controlling it can just say, like, oh, you're ignorant, you're ignorant, you're ignorant, because you actually are, right? Because it's, but like that's the scariest part.